Hey guys, it's Kevin again, and this is going to be my review for the Vampire Diaries Season 6, Episode 2, Yellow Ledbetter. And I was definitely really looking forward to this episode because of the way last week's episode ended. I couldn't wait for this episode. I thought this episode, I thought this episode was another really great episode. I was very surprised, though, with some of the things that happened in this episode, especially with Elena. I was really surprised with what ended up happening, definitely, but let's just get to it. Overall, I thought this was another fantastic episode. I love the direction they're going in. There's a lot of things that this episode actually improved. I thought this episode was actually... It was more action-packed than the first one. There was more going on this one, definitely. More going on than the first episode. But I still really love the first episode, but I thought this episode was better in my opinion. So let's just get to it. So basically, we see a flashback to 4 months ago. Because if you remember in the Vampire Diaries, when when Damon and Bonnie died, they just disappeared and it faded to white. We have no idea where they went. So we actually find out in this episode what happened to them, which I think is really interesting because even though they're not everyone thinks they're pretty much dead, they're still on the show, which I like because they are good characters. I do like that it's not, that they're dead. They really just disappeared, so I think that's really interesting. So 4 months ago, Damon's looking around at Bonnie right after they crossed over, and it looks like they're in the same place. It looks like nothing changed, and she wonders where everyone is because no one's there. So they're walking down the road, and he says he feels a fang, so he must still be a vampire. So they see that something he blew up an hour ago is now intact, and they wonder why the town is deserted and where they are. And, Damon says it's not a question of where they are, it's more like, where they are, I thought that was just a really interesting way to start the episode. Very weird, but it perfectly goes with the beginning of last week's episode. So then we see Matt, and of course, I really liked Matt and Jeremy's plot this season, basically, we find out that that girl, Sarah, Jeremy is having sex with, basically, and he basically tells her to get lost and tells Jeremy he shouldn't have brought her there. Jeremy's defense is that Caroline compelled her so she doesn't remember, so Elena attacking her, so she doesn't remember Elena attacking her, but Matt says he doesn't care about anybody. He doesn't care what happened, and really this just shows that Matt really just wants Jeremy to get a life, really. Just get a life, Jeremy. I understand that you're upset about Bonnie, but get a fucking life. Like, you can't just sit on the couch all the time. I understand what Matt's saying. He needs to get a life. So then Stefan is finding his overnight guest making breakfast for him, Ivy, and he says he didn't expect her to still be there. Now, I still do not trust Ivy. I did not trust her in this episode. Now, Ivy gets her feelings hurt, and he asks her to have dinner, but he says he should probably cook since she made a mess of the kitchen, and she smiles, and right here, you can still see that Stefan is still being very distant towards everyone. He's not talking to anyone or anything. So, basically, Elena is packing up Damon's things and photos of the two of them together. She's trying to make a clean break. And if you remember, Elena is basically trying to completely forget about Damon. She wants Alaric to remove Damon from her memory. So she pulls out a shirt and thinks about him wearing it, them kissing, and her peeling it off. She's thinking about him sexually, basically. So she puts it into a box of stuff and her journal with notes about him. And she tells by the way, flashbacks in this episode, love them. I thought the flashbacks were great. And she tells Jeremy that she has to let Damon go because it's making her more dangerous. He says, well, shouldn't you just forget about Bonnie too? And I like what Elena says here. She says, thinking about Bonnie makes her feel sad. Thinking about Damon makes her feel, dangerous. So she explains to Matt and Jeremy that they have to keep it secret from her once Alaric compels her. They have to keep it secret. So they can't tell anyone about it because she doesn't want anyone to really know. She doesn't want to be able to be, to show, really. So I thought that was very interesting what's going to happen there. So basically, then we see Alaric and Caroline chatting, and she is outraged that Stefan has been lying about it, looking for a way to get Bonnie and Damon back. Alaric basically tells her that, hey, he's lying to you. So he says that someone is working on it. He knows that someone is obviously doing this. And then we see Enzo. And what a great way to return to his character. Enzo is still such a hilarious character. He is making out with this witch, pumping her for information. And we found out that Enzo is actually the one trying to figure out what happened to, trying to get the magic back in, trying to get supernaturals to come back in Mystic Falls. Now, the witch tells him that there's a coven in Oregon that found a way to communicate with their ancestors on the other side before it went away. and she says it's called the Gemini Coven, but it's very small, odd, and they don't like outsiders. So he rewards her with more kisses, but then Caroline shows up and interrupts them. Great way to, great encounter there. And he says she's a blast from the past and calls him gorgeous. And Alaric explains the method for how he'll wipe her brain. He'll wipe her brain, and he says they are going to search through her memories, and any with Damon, they will modify. So, I thought that was very interesting, what happened there. And basically, he is very hesitant, of course, because Elena just told him to make a very big decision here. She wants him to completely forget about, Damon. But Alaric is telling her, look, that when you do this, there's no going back. He needs to assure her of that, because she needs to know that when she does this, there is no going back to this. So, basically, he says once they hit that core memory, they can wipe that, and the rest should fall like dominoes. So she wants him to do them all at once, but he says it's more complicated, and he asks if she has any doubts, and she says she has to do this. She has to, because it's turning her into a killer, basically. And I understand why Elena's doing it. As stupid as it is, it makes sense why Elena's doing it. She doesn't want to be a killer anymore. She is turning into a killer because of this. People are on the hunt for her. She doesn't want to be like this. She doesn't want to be sort of like how Damon was in Season 1. Damon in Season 1 was a killer. He was the Ripper. And last season, Stefan was the Ripper. So definitely, you can definitely see a lot of parallels between Elena, Damon, and Stefan. You can see a lot of parallels between them. So, basically, she wants him to do them all at once, but he says it's more complicated. He asks if she has any doubts, and she says she has to do it. He asks if she's afraid, and she says more sad because she doesn't want to stop loving him, but missing Damon has made her dangerous. So they start, and he asks her who Damon is, and she just, basically, he asks her a bunch of times, and she says, he's her boyfriend, she loved him, and he died. And we see him, and I love the flashbacks in this episode. We see a memory of meeting him when she was in high school and him calling her Catherine. And she says he seemed dangerous but exciting. And Alaric asks how he made her feel, and she says, like, anything was possible. He tells her that the man she met was nice but a stranger. And basically she says, two people passing in the night. He asks if she's okay. And I thought that was very interesting, what happened there. Just a very, very sad scene, definitely. And then we see another flashback with, not flashback, but we see more of Bonnie and Damon. So, Damon's walking along a street with Bonnie, and there is no one there, and she says there's something odd about the cars, and Damon says they look new, but are at least 20 years old, and they come to Elena's house, which is not burned, because if you remember, Elena burned her house down when she thought that Jeremy died. She thought that Jeremy died, so that's why she burned her house down, and because of that, she thought Jeremy died and everything, so... Sorry, I'm just telling my friend that the full recap is up. So, basically, he knows that they're not in the present, obviously, because her house is still there. So, he grabs a newspaper off the lawn and shows her the date, which is May 10th, 1994. And she says that this is impossible. And there's a major solar eclipse that day. And Damon says the question isn't where they are, but when they are. So, I thought that was really big there, definitely. So then Alaric asks Elena about a moment, and it's the one where Damon kissed her, and she says she shouldn't have let him do it, and Alaric reminds her it was inappropriate, which it was, because she was dating Stefan at the time. The first time they kissed was when Damon was on his deathbed, when he thought he was going to die, because I believe he was poisoned. I can't remember. This was all back in Season 2, so I can't remember exactly what it was. I believe it was because he was poisoned or something. And he asked who Damon was, and again she says he was her boyfriend, she loved him, and he died, but the info comes very slowly now, and Damon's wondering, the info comes very slowly now, and she just keeps saying that, so... Then Damon wonders, we see another thing with Damon and Bonnie. Damon's wondering if there's booze in the mystery location, and Bonnie says before the other side collapsed, her Graham said she made a sacrifice so she could have peace, and Bonnie thinks that her Graham sent her here. So she took Damon along because they were touching, and Bonnie says magic should be able to get them out if it sent them there, and she tries to light a candle with her magic, but she can't, so... Elena is then talking to Caroline, who tries to get her to basically say, what the fuck are you doing here? And I agree with Caroline is basically like, what the fuck are you doing? You're never gonna forget, you're gonna forget him forever, what are you doing? Basically, she reminds him he was using his looks to get info from the witch. He says he has no idea if the Gemini Coven lead is legit, and says, oh wait, I'm on the wrong part. Caroline says she's chasing down a lead. Elena says Laura can always give her memories back if they find Damon. And Caroline says Bonnie would want her to do what's best. That scene was kind of sad, she says Bonnie would want you to do that. And Elena says she's glad Caroline has hope, but says that she needs to do this to survive. So then Enzo asks Caroline why she dropped out of school, because he heard she did, and he says she should go back since she only looks take you so far. And she reminds him he was using his looks to get info from the witch, which he was. And he says he has no idea if the Gemini Coven lead is legit, and says they're going somewhere else. And Stefan uses his speedy vampire skills to chop vegetables for Ivy's supper, and he guzzles a bag of blood he had hidden in the fridge, but then hides it when she shows up because, again, she doesn't know he's a vampire. So she says she ran into some of his friends, and in comes Caroline and Enzo. And basically that it's not, who says that since it's not the girl's place, it's an open invitation. He claps his hands together and asks Stefan if he has any bourbon. And Stefan serves dinner, and they're all eating. And we get it's a very awkward dinner party scene. Ivy asks how they knew Stefan, and he says he dated her best friend, in high school, which is true. This is how Caroline and Stefan know each other. And he explains that he met Ivy, and this is interesting. We find out how he met Ivy. Basically, she brought her car into the auto shop where he works, and Caroline's floored about this because Enzo compliments Ivy's, clavicle, and he says he's a neck person, and so is Stefan, who says not anymore. And Ivy asks Caroline if Enzo is her boyfriend, and I thought that was funny because a lot of people ship those two together. Me personally, I'm a Steroline person, but Caroline and Enzo, those two are just it's always funny to watch their banter because they literally hate each other to a point where it's just so funny to watch, definitely. And I thought that was really funny. And I like this episode was definitely a little bit more funnier than the other episodes because, Elena basically, with Elena, everything was really sad. So everything else was good to see that they had some comedy in there. I definitely really enjoyed that. So Enzo asks her if she believes in the supernatural, and she says she does. And he says he had to get a witch to do a low-care spell to find Stefan, and she seems very skeptical about this. So then we see Damon, and he's dancing and drinking to the song What a Man, and he's cooking pancakes, and it's kind of similar to the first scene we saw. However, it's very different, because the last scene, the scene at the end of the first episode was much more tame, much more just, cute between the two of them. So Bonnie's surprised that he made pancakes, and she went to her old house and finds her childhood teddy bear in her Graham's grimoire. And Bonnie says they are in a snapshot of 1994, and everything that was there in 94 is there with them. He smiles and pops in a CD, and she says he's ridiculous, and he says he's consistent, and he offers her the crossword, and she says nothing like breakfast. And I like that we see here that they really do hate each other. They hate each other. They just tolerate each other at this point. So she goes to start it, and then the eclipse happens again, and he asks her to look at the day on the paper, and it's the same as yesterday. And Bonnie says they're living the same day all over again, and Damon says that proves it. He's in hell, and she is there with him. So Jeremy is then boozing basically. He's still drinking. He has he's drinking a lot, and Matt asks if it's early for that, and he asks where's Sarah, and he says he doesn't know. So Matt leaves, and she comes in and asks why he didn't say she was there, and he says he didn't feel like it. So Tripp finds Matt out running, and he asks about the girl with the animal bite, and Matt says she's at his house, and Tripp says the girl was in a stolen car. And Tripp says if she's bad news, he wants to keep an eye on her, and he asks Matt to let him know if she shows back up, and Elaine, and that was really interesting. So Elaine then tells Alaric about when Stefan bailed on her for a formal dance, but Damon showed up to save her from being embarrassed, which I do remember that episode. That was a very good episode. And she says that was when she let herself notice how, as she calls it, sexy, how sexy he was. That's what she calls it, at least. And that's when she basically realized that he was the love of her life. And Alaric says she went down the stairs and no one was there. And she says she was embarrassed but got over it. He says they have to find the key memory. She says it was when she found out about the sire bond. They tested, but that doesn't work. So she says that they spent the night together for the first time. They test that. That doesn't work. So she says she can't, and then she's to the point where she's like, you know what, I'm not doing this anymore, and she doesn't believe in the theory of what they're trying. She stomps out saying the idea was stupid, and it's not going to work. So at this point, I was like, all right, maybe she's giving up, and I actually liked she was giving up, because honestly, again, I understand why she's doing it, but at the same time, she's just going a little too far, in my opinion. So Damon's making breakfast again. It's 6 weeks later, and Bonnie is so annoyed that she's done the same crossword every day for 6 weeks and still can't get 27 across. And Damon reminds her witching ability is failing them, and he says not only is he stuck with her, he's stuck with the useless version of her. She says she heard something, and he says it's just what hell sounds like. And she says maybe they're stuck in her hell, since she's with the person she likes least in the world. So, again, really funny banter between the two of them. So then we get back to the dinner party scene, and Caroline is very annoyed to learn that Stefan has been living there for more than 2 months, and she says that's odd since everyone thought that he was busy investigating, and he says to drop it and to let him do what's happy, and Enzo says it's likely a big misunderstanding, stabs Stefan in the hand, and Ivy is shocked about this, like she was not seeing that coming. I didn't see that coming. So Caroline compels him to calm down, comes upstairs with him, and Enzo calls him a coward for giving up on Damon, and stabs him in the neck. Stefan throws him across the room, snaps his neck. Caroline takes a call from Alaric, and it's just a really intense scene there. That was definitely a really intense scene. And he says he hit her a wall with her remembering when she fell in love with Damon. Basically, Alaric's trying to find out the moment that she fell in love with Damon, and Caroline says, that she's hiding the truth. She's not going to admit it, which is true. This is true what Caroline said, that she fell in love with Damon when she was still with Stefan. And Caroline realizes Stefan is standing there and heard it, and we get probably one of my favorite scenes of the episode, definitely. I thought this was definitely one of the best scenes of the episode. I thought the scene was so well done. I love the acting in this episode. It worked perfectly with the way the episode was going. So Stefan's cleaning up his apartment and stares at Enzo's body, and he tells her she should get him out of there before he comes to. And she says she's sorry, and he says he doesn't care about the Elena thing. And Caroline says she liked that he was the one that always cared more than anyone. He says he had to stop, and, she's very surprised that he's acting this way because, he's definitely not acting like himself. He's acting very distant, and she wants to know why. And I like Stefan's reasoning here. In some ways, I agree with both of them, in the sense that he should have at least talked to her because, they're best friends. They tell each other everything. And basically, I really like what Stefan says here. He says he had to stop and move on. And he says he followed every lead Alaric sent for months. He says they were all dead ends. And she says Enzo had a lead, but Stefan says he already checked the Gemini Coven. He says Damon and Bonnie are dead, so he had to go away and basically just accept that they're dead. And I like that he accepted that because no one else is really accepting it. Yes, Caroline is, Caroline is so focused on, oh, let's try to bring him back. But Stefan basically saying, Stefan's not sugarcoating anything. You're saying, hey, look, they're dead. They're not coming back. That's just the way this is working. So she says she was falling apart without him and asks how he didn't tell them that from her messages, and she realizes he never listened to them and he erased them. And, basically, again, I understand why he did this. He wanted to be away because he realized that, look, he needs to start over, they're dead, and he just wanted them to handle it on their own because everyone else wasn't really dealing with it, and he was. However, Caroline calls him a dick. She is so upset with him, and said if he wants Enzo out to throw him out himself, and then she stomps out. So she's really pissed at him. So Alaric then finds Elena leaving a message for Luke, asking him for more herbs, and Alaric realizes she's doing it again. And I was very surprised that happened, because Elena, it looked like she was going to stop, but nope, she's still addicted. So Alaric says she wasn't being honest with herself, and that's why it's not working. And he says she needs to talk about the Damon stuff when she was with Stefan, because that's the moment that she was, that's the moment when she fell in love with Damon. However, she does say, look, she says, I always loved Stefan, I was always loyal to him. And basically, Alaric says he believes that, and she says she loves Stefan even when he was the Ripper. And he reminds her that she loved both of them and says it's okay that she did that. And she says Catherine used to say it was okay to love them both. And she said it's sad that her evil doppelganger was smarter than her, which she was, if you think about it. I mean, Catherine was able to, do that whole traveler spell, and we got that really awesome arc with her. I miss Catherine. I really do. I mean, I love what's going on in Vampire Diaries right now, but I really miss Catherine. I do. So they're sitting, and Alaric tells her to tell him the moment that she knew she loved Damon. And I really love what she says here, because this really was the truth. This was when she realized it, because she says it was her birthday. She says they spent the summer looking for Stefan, and Caroline threw her a party because she was sad. And she says she wasn't going to go to the party until Damon came in with a birthday gift, and he gave her a necklace that Stefan had given her. I believe this was episode 3 of episode 1 of season 3, because I know episode 1 of season 3 was called The Birthday, and I believe this was when Stefan was the Ripper. And he gives her a necklace that Stefan had given her, but she lost. And she says even though Damon knew it would remind her of losing Stefan, he loved her enough to give it to her. She says she loved him then because it was just selfless what he did. And Damon's not really a selfless person. He's really not. So she says she didn't want to love him, but she did. And she tells Alaric to do it. She takes his hand. She says she's ready. And he asks if she's sure, and she says she is. He tells her Damon never came in, never gave her the necklace. She says the party was miserable. She spent rest of the night watching movies with Jeremy, and she starts crying. She says Damon killed Jeremy right in front of her, and, basically, Alaric asks who Damon is, and she says Stefan's brother. She says he was a monster, and he died. And basically, that was a really big change for Elena. Definitely a very big change for Elena because now she is pretty much trying to just forget about him completely. Forget that she ever loved him. Now, she's not forgetting about Damon completely. She's forgetting about the fact that she ever loved him. So we see Damon now trapped in her house in the past, looking through her bedroom door where he stood in her memory, finding a necklace among her things, which he touches tenderly. And Caroline sits in her car crying. She gets a call, tries to calm down, and it's Elena, and I thought this was very surprising because Alaric actually did it because Elena's all of a sudden in a very cheerful mood. She tells her to put on party clothes, come to Whitmore to go hang out with her and Tyler. She tells Caroline she ditched all her classes and hung out with Alaric. She says things are taking a turn for the better. She says to get her ass there and have some fun. Caroline says she'll be there later for her to spend the night. She hangs up and starts crying as Enzo gets into the car. Now, while this was very surprising that this happened, it's a really good twist because now Elena basically doesn't remember any of the love she had with Damon, any of that love they had with each other, and it was very well done in my opinion because here's the thing. If Damon does come back to this show, which I really do feel he is, something is going to happen where he's going to come back, she's not going to remember any of the love they had, which is going to be really sad, but at the same time, I thought it was definitely very interesting what happened there. I thought it was definitely a very well done twist, and I personally really enjoyed it. So, we get this really good montage going. Well, not just yet, but in a few minutes we'll have a really good montage going. And then we see that Enzo says that was a bust, and then he turns her face to him, sees her tears. He says he'll drive back, walks around the car to get in. Ivy comes down and asks Stefan what happened with the wreckage, and he says Enzo's a very bad drunk. She says Caroline seems very nice, and he says yes. He goes to take out some debris. He comes back in, and Enzo's there holding Ivy, and he snaps her neck. That was extremely surprising when he did that. I was not expecting Enzo to do that. But wow, that was just so surprising that he just snapped Ivy's neck, probably because he thinks that she knows too much now, because she knows sort of about, what they're doing in their mission. I understand why Enzo did it, but, that was extremely surprising. So, Stefan attacks him, Enzo throws him back, and he says Damon told him once that he wanted to cure Stefan to eternity and misery, and he wondered what Stefan could have done to deserve that, but it says now he knows, and he says Stefan is no brother to Damon. He says, and I really like what Enzo says here, because it's true, he says brothers don't give up. He says anytime he sees Stefan trying to give up or start over with a new life, he will make him pay and give him the misery he deserves. So I understand why Enzo's doing this. Enzo's doing this to show Stefan that he, to see what Stefan really cares about, because Stefan claims he's trying to start over, so Enzo's really not really doing something bad here. What Enzo's really doing is he's trying to get Stefan to just remember, what ended up, what ended up happening, basically that he needs to move on with his life, but not completely. He needs to still talk to his friends, and because they're his friends, he needs to be there for them. So, then I really like this next scene, probably the best scene. Whoever plays Jeremy, I think his name is Michael Trevino. I think that's the guy that plays him. I'm not entirely sure, but this was probably his best performance I've seen in a while. Just great performance. Best performance of Jeremy since the finale, definitely. He leaves a message on Bonnie's voicemail. It's a very sad scene. He says he paid her cell bill to keep it there. He rants and says she shouldn't have died without saying anything to him. He says he'll call and yell tomorrow and hangs up. And Matt comes in and tells Jeremy that Sarah stole the car she was in. She's there and says she stole it from her boss, who was a perv. And Matt says she had to go, and she says it's okay since she has a dad there, even though she hasn't met him yet. And Jeremy says they'll go stay at the Salvatores until they find him. And Matt then calls Tripp, and basically he says that Sarah has family there, and he says Jeremy's having a very hard time. Tripp says he knows Jeremy. He says he grew up with Jeremy's dad. He says he's from a founding family, the Fells, and Matt says that must mean he knows the real deal. And then we find out that Tripp has a truck full of vampires chained up, drives over the ceiling, opens the roof of the trunk so they all fry as a spell burns them up, and he turns the radio up. And that is huge what is happening there, because he is now keeping all these vampires in Mystic Falls. He has them tied up, and that, he is probably going to be I'm thinking now Tripp is going to be our main villain of the season, which I really like, because that is just very sadistic what he's doing. It's a very awesome thing what he's doing. It perfectly, if this is the final season, perfect final season plot. Definitely really looking forward to seeing what's going to happen there. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what's going to happen with Tripp. Definitely. I was not expecting that at all. Awesome twist. You know, Vampire Diaries can be very predictable, but this was not predictable. No, I thought that was very well done. And then surprisingly, we end again with Bonnie and Damon. I don't know if we're going to keep ending with them, but for the first 2 episodes, we've ended with Bonnie and Damon. So, Bonnie's cooking dinner for her and Damon. She sits by the fire with him at the table. He takes a bite out of the food, and she tells him she misses them too. He picks up her crossword puzzle, and she says she got 27 across. She says she didn't, and he reads it off the answer. And she says she didn't write, and he says he didn't either. And Bonnie says there's someone else here. Now, here's what I'm thinking. Those 2 people we saw last week of Bonnie and Damon, they were very different from the Bonnie and Damon we saw in this episode. So I'm wondering if they're actually maybe like an alternate universe of Bonnie and Damon. Maybe like they're trapped somewhere and like there's another Bonnie and Damon. I don't know what's really going on there, but we'll have to see. But this episode was another amazing episode. I loved it. I thought the acting was great. Everything was fantastic in this episode. Let's talk a little bit about it. Elena forgetting about Damon, I don't think this is going to last as long as everyone thinks it is. I think eventually, you know, Damon's going to come back and he's going to try to get Elena to remember again. But I think they should take a while on this, definitely, because I like seeing this. My only thing here is what happens next to Elena. You know, even though I really love the storyline, I love where it's going, what exactly is going to happen to Elena now? You know, Elena doesn't have much of a plot now. Her plot was that she was so upset over Damon, and now she doesn't have much to do because she's forgot about Damon. She doesn't care about Damon anymore because she forgot about him. So my question is, what really happens to Elena now? Does she just forget about him? Like, what happens? I'm interested in seeing what's going to happen there, definitely. You know, what she decides to do. If she forgets to just forget about Damon altogether. Well, I'm sure, I mean, she knows about Damon, but she doesn't remember any of the fact that she loved him. She doesn't remember that at all. So I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what ends up happening there. Stefan and Enzo, I like that Enzo is trying to prove to Stefan that he needs to, you know, listen to Caroline. I do agree what Stefan is saying, that, you know, sometimes you just need to start over and things like that, but, and, you know, accept the fact that Damon is dead. I understand that, but, like, what he's doing, being so distant towards everyone, is not the right thing to do. And Enzo killing Ivy, I think, was a good thing, because it shows Stefan that he didn't really care about Ivy. He met her at a car shop. He didn't really care about her that much. He's only doing this because he wants to start over, and Enzo doesn't want him to start over. Enzo's not really the bad guy here, really. Enzo's not the bad guy. I'm going to say that right now. Enzo is not the bad guy. I like that Enzo did this. I think it's a good thing that he did this, because he's trying to show he's trying to show Stefan that he needs to move on and just accept the fact that Damon's dead. That's fine, but he needs to you know, go back to, he needs to leave Mystic Falls and go back. He just has to do that. That's just what he has to do. So, the other thing I want to talk about, of course, is Tripp. I love this twist with Tripp now. I think he's going to be a really awesome villain. He seems like he's going to be a really sadistic, really cool villain. I'm looking forward to seeing what other sorts of things he's going to do this season. I think he's just a really cool villain, in my opinion. I'm looking forward to seeing what else he's going to do. If Matt finds out, I'm very interested in seeing what's going to happen if Matt finds out the truth about Tripp, because, one, he's working with Tripp, so I'm wondering what's going to happen there. Jeremy, with that voicemail with Bonnie, was very sad to watch, but I thought it was definitely very well done. My thing with Tripp also is that I feel like Tripp is going to come into wherever, you know, where Elena and, you know, all of them are living, and basically try to take them one by one. I don't know if that's going to happen, but I really don't know what's going to happen there. I guess we'll just have to see. I feel like he's not going to do any sort of major damage to any of the characters till Jeremy and Matt decide to leave Mystic Falls. You know, I feel like when that happens, that's going to be like, all right, now he's going to go in and try to basically torch them. I think it's going to be really awesome, though, and he seems like a really awesome villain, in my opinion. This whole thing with Elaine forgetting Damon, and I don't think it's forever. I think Lark will eventually get her to remember again. And then, of course, with Bonnie and Damon, I personally don't know what's going on there. I don't really have a definitive answer of what's going on there. You guys might, but I personally don't have a definitive answer. I don't know exactly. I guess we'll just have to see in the next episode. But this episode was amazing. Another great episode. I really loved it. And let me know what you guys saw this episode. I know some of you might say they ruined the show. In my opinion, they didn't ruin the show, because it's a really interesting twist that Elena now basically forgets that she ever loved Damon. I think that's a very interesting twist, especially the fact that, you know, especially the fact that she now knows that Damon, especially the fact that she knows that, she still does have Damon in memory, but she doesn't have any of the fact that, she loved Damon. Plus, there's the thing that Damon is, not alive, but he could come back, definitely. That's been my review. Hope you guys enjoy. I'll see you guys in my next video, which will be for my review of Girl Meets World. So I'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.